I was 19 when I realized my family wasn't just dysfunctional. It was quietly, elegantly venomous. Not in the way people throw plates or scream at each other at Thanksgiving. No, my family was the kind that smiled through their teeth and handed out emotional knives in velvet cases, polished and ready. You only noticed the bleeding once you were alone. I'm Parker, and for most of my life, I've kept my head down. I'm the youngest of three, a computer science major, and the kind of kid who fixes Wi-Fi problems and gets asked to make the TV talk to Netflix again. My brother Nathan, 3 years older, works in logistics, while my cousin Caleb, technically my aunt's son, but raised almost like a sibling, somehow drifted into every conversation and space we had, like smoke slipping under doors. Aunt Marlene and my mom were sisters, and despite their fair share of arguments growing up, Mom always tried to keep the peace. That meant inviting Aunt Marlene and Caleb to family dinners, birthdays, even vacations. I never understood why. Marlene had a way of taking up too much space, her opinions filling rooms before she even spoke. And Caleb? He was the golden boy, tall, charming, and a complete parasite wrapped in designer cologne. The first real crack showed at my high school graduation. I hadn't expected much. I'm not flashy. I had decent grades, a few academic awards, nothing wild. But as I stepped down from the stage, diploma in hand, I noticed something strange. My family clapped, except Aunt Marlene, who leaned over to Caleb with a smirk. I caught the eye roll. I shouldn't have cared, but I did. Later that evening, she gave me a thin-lipped smile and said, "Well, at least you're good with computers." That's something. It was wrapped like a compliment, but I felt the sting. I brushed it off. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe she just didn't know how to talk to people. But then, little things started adding up. At family gatherings, she'd interrupt me mid-sentence or switch topics as soon as I joined a conversation. If I brought up my internship at a software firm, she'd immediately pivot to Caleb's vague business ventures, which always sounded suspiciously like, "I know a guy who's starting something big." Caleb would nod, toss in a line about early investments, and the adults would lap it up. He wore ambition like a tailored suit, even though he never seemed to actually do anything. Meanwhile, I was studying, coding, building projects on GitHub, and working part-time at my uncle's accounting firm to save for school. But to Aunt Marlene, Caleb was the next Jeff Bezos, and I was just good with tech. It didn't help that Caleb treated me like I was 12. He'd ruffle my hair when I walked by, which I hated, or call me the kid in front of others. I was 5 inches taller than him by then, but it didn't matter. I remember one 4th of July barbecue. I brought homemade raspberry lemonade I'd been experimenting with. People seemed to like it. But when someone asked who made it, Caleb quipped, "Probably the same guy who still thinks raspberry pie is food." Everyone laughed. I smiled too, but it stuck with me. Not the joke, that was just stupid. What got me was how fast people were to laugh at me instead of with me. Like I was the harmless background character in the family sitcom. Still, I kept showing up. I told myself it was just part of being the quiet one. I was helping Uncle Jeff at the accounting office, learning the ropes while balancing school and freelance web design gigs. I didn't mind the work. Numbers made sense. People didn't. But I liked Uncle Jeff. He wasn't loud or showy. He taught me things without making me feel like I owed him for it. Around that time, Mom started dropping hints that she might be retiring early. She'd worked for the state for nearly 30 years, and the stress was finally catching up to her. Nathan was doing well, his job was steady, and he was thinking of buying a condo with his girlfriend. That left me, still in school, still working late nights coding apps and managing spreadsheets. I didn't mind carrying more weight if it meant Mom could rest. But I should have known someone else would take notice, someone who'd never lifted a finger unless it was to point blame. One evening, about 2 weeks after my 20th birthday, Mom called a family dinner. Just the core group. Me, her, Nathan, Aunt Marlene, and Caleb. I didn't think much of it at the time. I assumed it had something to do with her retirement plans. She cooked one of her best spreads: baked chicken, roasted vegetables, mashed potatoes with garlic butter. Comfort food. It was too quiet at first. The kind of quiet that stretches like a rubber band right before it snaps. Halfway through dinner, Mom cleared her throat. "So," she said gently, "there's something I need to tell you all. I'm stepping down at the end of the quarter. Retirement came a bit sooner than I planned, but I've decided it's time." Nathan smiled and nodded, supportive as always. Caleb made a show of raising his glass, like he was toasting a CEO. But Aunt Marlene, she just pursed her lips. That's sudden, she said, dabbing her mouth with a cloth napkin. I hope you've planned for it. I have, Mom replied. Parker's been helping with the finances. He's smarter than I am with all that. Aunt Marlene hummed, eyes darting to me. Well, I hope he's not getting too involved in things beyond his age. You know how young people can be. It was subtle, a throwaway line, but it hit like a punch. I looked at Mom. She didn't flinch. He's capable, Mom said calmly. And trustworthy. That was the first time I saw it. The flicker. A tight little twitch at the corner of Aunt Marlene's eye. She wasn't worried about Parker making a mistake. She was worried Parker had access to something she couldn't touch. Later that night, after everyone left, I helped Mom with the dishes. She was quiet, hands moving slowly as if her mind was elsewhere. I couldn't shake the feeling that dinner had been a test. Or maybe a warning. Did something happen? I asked her. She paused, then gave me a tired smile. Just keep your eyes open, okay? She didn't say anything else. But I could feel it. Something was coming. Something that smelled like smoke under a closed door. And I wasn't sure yet who had lit the match. The signs weren't obvious at first. Like a squeaky floorboard you only notice when the house is silent. But once Mom said keep your eyes open, I did. And suddenly, I couldn't unsee it. The way Aunt Marlene's tone shifted when talking about money. The questions she asked that didn't sound like small talk anymore. So how's work at the office? You must see a lot of private info doing what you do, huh? You think Parker's a little young to be dealing with all those numbers? Always dressed up in a casual voice, like she was just making conversation. But her eyes were sharp, searching. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But then one afternoon, I got to the accounting office early and caught the tail end of a conversation between Aunt Marlene and Uncle Jeff. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I just froze at the door when I heard her voice. She was in his office, door cracked just slightly. I'm just saying, she said, he's what, 20? Kids make mistakes. And he's handling sensitive financials. One misclick, and that could be thousands gone. You wouldn't want something like that traced back to your firm, would you? My stomach sank. Jeff didn't say much. He's always been a quiet guy, but I heard the uncomfortable pause. Then he said, Parker's been very thorough. More than most of the new hires I've had. I'm sure, she replied, a little too sweetly. Just looking out for family. You know how it is. I slipped away before she saw me and spent the rest of the day pretending I hadn't heard anything. But it stuck in my chest like a splinter. She wasn't just trying to undermine me. She was planting seeds, getting people to doubt me. Why? It didn't take long to find out. A week later, I was helping Mom organize some old boxes in the garage when I found an envelope with an unfamiliar letterhead. Foxwell Trust Holdings. Inside was a brief, professional letter confirming the disbursement of funds from a family trust account, addressed to my mom. It said she had opted to split a significant portion between herself, Aunt Marlene, and Uncle Jeff, a decision made over a decade ago, back when Grandpa passed away and they were settling his affairs. I didn't know there was a trust. I didn't know Mom had any real money tucked away. She'd always been frugal. Coupon clippings, thrift stores, saving electricity like it was gold. I asked her about it, and she just sighed. It wasn't much, she said. Your grandfather left what he could. Your aunt got her share. Jeff too. I left mine alone. Figured it'd be for you and Nathan someday. She paused, then added, that's why Marlene's been circling. And just like that, the pieces started clicking together. Marlene wasn't just fishing for gossip. She was trying to figure out if there was still money left. If I had access to it. If I could be maneuvered. Around that time, Caleb started getting real friendly with me. And that's when I knew something was seriously off. Yo, Parker, he said one morning, showing up unannounced at the accounting office. Got time for lunch? I blinked. Yeah, I guess. We went to this overpriced burger place nearby, and he kept the small talk light for a while. Crypto, cars, this startup I might get in on. Then, like clockwork, he shifted. So, working with Uncle Jeff, huh? Must be cool. Bet you see all kinds of numbers flying around. I played dumb. Yeah, lots of receipts and spreadsheets. Riveting stuff. He laughed, but there was tension behind it. But like client accounts, right? Bank stuff? You ever see, like, family files? I just looked at him. Why? No reason, he said too quickly. Just curious. After that, I kept my answers short. We finished lunch, and I told him I had work to get back to. He didn't push. But I could feel it. He was testing the waters, seeing how much I knew, seeing how much I might say. From then on, I started keeping records, screenshots, notes, email logs, just in case. Because something told me this wasn't just about snide comments at dinner anymore. This was a hunt. And I was the deer they thought was too slow to notice the wolves. Then came the missing money. Uncle Jeff called me into his office one Friday afternoon. His face was pale, jaw tight. "Parker," he said, motioning for me to close the door. "We're short $25,000 from the retained earnings account." My heart skipped. "What? How?" He turned his screen toward me and pulled up the ledger. A withdrawal had been processed the day before, one that didn't match any of our scheduled transactions. "I didn't do that," I said immediately. "I know," Jeff replied. "You're not the only one with access. But you're the only one I know who checks twice before breathing." I looked closer. The authorization ID used matched my login, but I hadn't made the transfer. I wasn't even in the office that day. I had class until 3 and then worked remotely from home. Jeff stared at the screen, then at me. "This looks bad," he said, low and serious. "I trust you. But if an audit happens, I'll need to show who used what credentials." I nodded, swallowing a rising panic. "Can I see the security footage from that day?" He hesitated. "The office safe? That's a separate system. I don't have clearance to pull it, but we can request it." "Do it," I said, voice tight. "Please." He agreed, but it would take a few days. That weekend was unbearable. I kept imagining someone, my aunt, Caleb, slipping into the office, using my login somehow. But how would they get it? I never shared it. My password wasn't easy. And then it hit me. 2 weeks earlier, during a family dinner, Caleb had borrowed my laptop. Said he needed to send a quick email because his phone was dead. I handed it over without thinking. I was sitting right there. But I had been logged into the firm portal. If he'd checked. I spent the next 3 days obsessing over browser logs, timestamps, anything I could find. Meanwhile, the silence from Aunt Marlene was deafening. Normally, she'd be texting Mom something passive-aggressive about how quiet Parker's been lately. But now, nothing. Then, midweek, Jeff called me. "They reviewed the footage," he said. "Come in tomorrow." I barely slept that night. When I arrived, Jeff was waiting with a thumb drive in his hand. He didn't speak, just plugged it into the monitor and clicked play. It was black and white footage from the office hallway, timestamped 2 days ago. Around 11:26 a.m., a figure entered frame. Shorter than me, wearing a hoodie and baseball cap. But the walk, the way he glanced over his shoulder, unmistakable. It was Caleb. He moved quickly, punching in the safe room code like he'd done it 100 times. Which was strange, because the code changed monthly and only a handful of people knew it. Jeff and I included. Jeff looked at me. "How'd he know the code?" I stared at the screen. "I don't know." He paused the video. "We have a problem." That evening, I sat across from Mom at the kitchen table. I showed her the footage. Her face was unreadable at first. Then the rage crept in, slow, simmering. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just sat back and whispered, "She used you." We didn't say who. We didn't need to. The next day, we called a family meeting. Nathan came. Aunt Marlene came. Caleb came. Mom set the laptop on the table and said one sentence that cracked the air like thunder. "Give back the $25,000 you stole, or leave forever." Aunt Marlene blinked. "Excuse me." Nathan stood, backing Mom. "You heard her." Marlene narrowed her eyes. "This is a setup. You've always hated my son." Mom didn't answer. She just hit play. The footage rolled in silence. At the 10-second mark, Caleb shifted in his chair. At 20 seconds, he swallowed. At 30, his foot tapped once against the floor. When the video ended, Mom looked up. "Do you want to explain?" Caleb didn't speak. But Marlene scoffed. "This proves nothing. That could be anyone. Hoodies? Baseball caps? It's practically a disguise." I slid a photo across the table, a still frame of Caleb's face as he turned toward the camera. You could see his profile. Clear as day. Her eyes flickered. That's when she leaned forward, voice low. "If you think this is over, you're wrong." And in that moment, I didn't just see a mother defending her son. I saw a woman who had built her whole life on manipulation and realized the walls were starting to crack. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The living room was quiet after Aunt Marlene's threat. Not dramatic quiet. Not shouting quiet. Just still. The kind of stillness that feels too full, like everyone's holding their breath and no one wants to be the first to blink. Caleb was slouched back on the couch, arms crossed, pretending to be bored. But his jaw was tight. And Marlene, she wasn't even looking at the laptop anymore. She was staring directly at Mom, not blinking, like she was daring her to make the next move. Mom didn't. Not right away. Instead, she closed the laptop gently, like the footage didn't matter anymore. Her eyes never left Marlene's. "You want to make this a fight?" she said softly. "Fine. But don't lie to my face and pretend your son didn't steal from us." Marlene scoffed, but her voice was colder now. "That footage proves nothing. There's no audio. No context. This could be a mistake, or even a setup." Nathan leaned forward. "A setup? What? We deep-faked Caleb into the security footage. Come on. You always hated him," she snapped, her voice sharp now, rising. "Both of you. You've resented him since he was born because he was actually wanted." "Enough," Mom said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. The words hung there. "Actually wanted." I blinked. It wasn't just an insult anymore. That was something else. Something darker. "What does that mean?" I asked. Marlene didn't answer. She just sat back, crossed her legs, and gave me a long, bitter smile. And that was when I felt it. Not confusion. Not even anger. Just a low, sinking dread. Because something had shifted. That night, I went up to my room, but I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about that look in her eyes. Not just anger. Not even fear. It was certainty. Like she still held cards we didn't know about. Like this wasn't the end game. Just a move in the middle of something much bigger. And I was right. 3 days later, I came home to find Mom sitting at the kitchen table, white envelope in her hand, face pale. She looked up when I walked in, but didn't speak right away. She just slid the envelope across to me. Inside was a letter. Legal stationery. Letterhead I recognized. Dad's old attorney. It was a formal notice. Request for reassessment of family trust access and mismanagement of funds. Filed by Aunt Marlene. I stared at it. "She's accusing us?" I asked slowly. Mom nodded, jaw tight. "She's claiming we manipulated the trust. That we're hiding money. That you tampered with the accounts." My hands curled into fists. She's the one who stole. "She knows," Mom said. "She just doesn't care. She's playing the long game." And suddenly, I got it. This wasn't about $25,000 anymore. This was about control. About tearing down everything she couldn't have. If she couldn't get access to what Grandpa left behind, she'd try to burn it down. I started pacing. She can't prove anything. The footage alone. She doesn't have to prove anything, Mom cut in. She just has to raise enough doubt to trigger a formal audit. If that happens, everything gets frozen. The trust. My accounts. Yours. The firm might even get pulled into it. That's what she wants. But why now? I asked. Why push this far? Mom sighed. Because I told her last month that I was changing the trust. That I'd be splitting it between you and Nathan only. I didn't tell her how much was left, but I made it clear. Caleb wasn't getting a dime. And there it was. I sat down slowly. The pieces clicked into place one by one, and the picture wasn't just ugly, it was calculated. I looked at Mom. She's trying to ruin us. Yes, she said. And if we don't get ahead of it, she just might. That night, we called a meeting with Uncle Jeff. We laid everything out, footage, the legal letter, the patterns of manipulation. Jeff listened in silence, then leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. I knew she was bold, he muttered. But this? She wants a paper trail, I said. She wants it to look like we're the problem. Jeff nodded. I'll speak to my lawyers. But Parker, you need to be careful. If she's using this much pressure, she's not done. He was right. Because the next betrayal wasn't from her. It was from someone I trusted. Nathan. It started small. A weird comment here or there. He'd stop by the house and talk with Mom in the other room. Voices hushed. When I'd walk in, they'd change the subject. At first, I assumed it was stress. That maybe they were just trying to keep me from worrying. But then one afternoon, I came home early from class and heard my name through the door. I'm just saying, if Parker hadn't given him his login, this never would have happened. It was Nathan's voice. Mom responded, firm. He didn't give anyone his login. Caleb snooped. Don't twist it. Yeah, but come on. He let him use his laptop. What did he expect? I stood frozen. Mom defended me, but Nathan wasn't backing down. He's still a kid, Mom. He doesn't get how this stuff works. He's got no idea what kind of mess this is turning into. Don't do this, she said, quiet. I'm just being real, he said. You're betting everything on someone who can't even legally drink yet. That one stung more than it should have. I stepped back before they saw me and went to the park for an hour just to breathe. When I got back, Nathan was gone. I confronted Mom that night. You didn't tell me he thinks it's my fault. She looked tired. He doesn't mean it like that. Yes, he does. She hesitated. Nathan's practical. He doesn't like chaos. He just wants this all to be over. Even if it means throwing me under the bus. Of course not. But her eyes didn't match her voice. That week, things got worse. Aunt Marlene's lawyer sent another letter, this time requesting financial statements from the last 5 years. She wanted full access to anything connected to the trust. The implication was clear. She was preparing to sue. And then I got the email. From Jeff's firm. Subject, credential alert, secondary login used. It listed a timestamp and IP address. I stared at it. It wasn't from Caleb's intrusion. It was recent. 2 days ago. Someone had used my backup credentials from inside the firm's network. I printed the report, heart pounding, and drove straight to Jeff's office. He met me at the door, tense. I was just about to call you. We went to his computer and matched the access logs. Whoever it was had downloaded files from the firm's private folder labeled Trust Documents, Parker/Mother. I looked at Jeff. Who else has access? He hesitated. Aside from me and you. Nathan. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Nathan? He wouldn't. He doesn't even work here, I said, but my voice was thin now. He's used my terminal before, Jeff said slowly. A few times. I didn't think anything of it. He said he was helping clean up documents for your mom. The rage came slow. Cold. I left the office without saying much and drove home in silence. Nathan was there, feet up on the coffee table, phone in hand, like nothing was wrong. I held up the printed access report. Want to explain this? He looked up, blinked, didn't speak. You went into the trust folder, I said. You copied the files. Nathan set the phone down slowly. I didn't take anything. I just looked. Why? He didn't answer. Why? I repeated. He stood. Because I need to know what we're dealing with. I need to protect this family. And frankly, Parker, you're not ready to handle all this. My hands were shaking now. You gave her something, didn't you? He flinched. You did, I said, breath catching. You gave her something from the files. Something she could use. I didn't give her everything, he muttered. Just a summary. Just enough to keep her from escalating. You betrayed us, I said. You betrayed me. She's family too, he snapped. You think this is black and white. You think you're the only one who matters here. I think I was the only one who didn't sell us out. He didn't speak. Didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. Just picked up his phone, walked out, and slammed the door. That night, I sat on the porch alone, staring into the dark. I wasn't just fighting Marlene anymore. I was fighting my own brother. And I had no idea what he gave her. But I was going to find out. And when I did, I'd make sure the damage stopped with me. It's a strange thing when your world breaks apart quietly. No explosions, no dramatic exits, just a slow collapse. Like watching paint crack on a ceiling you thought was solid. After Nathan walked out, I sat there for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel angry, not at first. I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped something out of me and left me standing there, pretending I was still whole. The next few days passed in a blur. People talk about hitting rock bottom like it's a moment, a single crash. But for me, it was a slow sinking. Every day, a little lower. Every morning, I checked my email with a pit in my stomach. Every call from the firm made my chest tighten. I started keeping my phone on silent because I couldn't bear the vibration anymore. It felt like a warning shot every time. Uncle Jeff tried to keep me in the loop, but he was under pressure too. The firm's partners had found out about the audit requests and the footage, and they were panicking. One of them, a gray-haired man named Martin who always wore loafers without socks, pulled Jeff into a meeting and told him flat out, "You bring that boy in again, you're dragging us all down with you." Jeff didn't fire me, but he stopped copying me on emails. And that hurt more than I expected. I still showed up. I still worked. But I was invisible now. The kid who got his login stolen. The liability. The potential scandal. Meanwhile, at home, Mom was unraveling. Slowly. She tried to stay strong, cooking, folding laundry, keeping her tone calm. But I saw the bags under her eyes. I heard the way her voice caught sometimes when she thought I wasn't listening. She'd been holding this family together with duct tape and goodwill for years, and now everything was slipping out from under her. One night, I found her in the living room, staring at an old photo of Grandpa. She didn't notice me at first. "He'd be ashamed of this," she said softly. "Of all of us." I sat down next to her and didn't say anything. A week later, the final blow came. The trust was officially frozen. Not permanently, but enough. The bank, after reviewing the conflicting claims and legal threats, issued a hold on the account pending a full audit and resolution of disputed control, which meant no access, no funds, no way for Mom to pay for the new roof we needed, no way to cover the medical bill for her blood pressure meds, which had gone up after her insurance change, no tuition support for my next semester. Nothing. We were locked out of her own father's legacy. And the worst part? Nathan didn't even come by. Not to check in. Not to explain. Not even to argue. Just vanished. I heard through a mutual friend that he and his girlfriend had moved forward with their condo purchase. Said something about starting fresh. Clean break. I didn't know if that meant from Mom and me, or from the whole situation. It didn't matter. The damage was done. So I did what I always did. I worked. I threw myself into code. I finished every freelance project I could find. Web redesigns for local businesses, data scrubbing for a logistics firm, even some sketchy Excel automation jobs that paid well and asked no questions. I stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. I stopped replying to texts unless they were from clients. I just kept moving. Because if I stopped, even for a second, I was afraid everything would collapse on top of me. And through it all, Aunt Marlene stayed silent. She didn't show up, didn't call, didn't gloat, but I knew she was watching. I could feel it, like a shadow just out of view. Then one day, I found out why. I was delivering an invoice to a client downtown, a law firm that needed a document portal redesigned, when I ran into Caleb. Literally. He came around the corner of the building just as I was stepping out. We both froze. He was wearing a suit, slightly too large, probably borrowed. His face was clean-shaven, his hair slicked back. He looked smug. I gave him a nod, tried to step past, but he blocked my path. "You still doing the whole, hard-working computer guy routine?" he asked, voice dripping with fake innocence. "Excuse me," I said, trying to brush past. But he wasn't done. "Mom says you're falling apart, that the trust got frozen. That must sting." I turned to face him fully. "Why are you here?" He smiled. "Client meeting. Some people actually respect my business ideas." I didn't reply. He leaned in slightly. "You know, Parker, I didn't have to do any of this. You brought it on yourself. Always acting like you're better. Like you're the only one Grandpa would have wanted to leave things to." I stared at him. "I never said that." "You didn't have to," he said, smirking. "Everyone could tell. You and your little spreadsheets. Your perfect GPA. Your whole honor student with a heart of gold act." I clenched my fists. "You stole from us." He shrugged. "You can't steal what you were never going to get. It's just money, Parker. You think you're the hero, but all you ever were was convenient." And with that, he walked past me into the building, whistling. I stood there for a long time. Not angry, not broken, just cold. Because that was when it clicked. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a family falling apart. This was war. And I'd been playing defense the whole time. I went home that night and started digging. Not emotionally. Not philosophically. Technically. Caleb had always been slippery. Vague business ventures. Instagram posts showing off rented cars. Shady investments. With zero paper trails. But now I had a reason to follow the trail. And I wasn't doing it for revenge. I was doing it to protect Mom. To protect what was left. I started with old messages, emails from him to me, to Mom, even social media DMs. I found patterns, phrases he reused, email signatures that looked professional but were riddled with inconsistencies. I ran his domains through public WHOS lookups, tracked hosting providers, ran pings, and DNS traces. One domain, supposedly the site for his tech startup, had been registered under a fake name. But the IP history showed a different story. It had once been hosted on a private server, the same block of IPs used by a small co-working space downtown. I recognized the name. It was where he'd once asked me to help set up his email, months ago, back when we were still family. I kept going. I called in favors from old classmates, people working in IT and cybersecurity. I didn't tell them why. Just said I needed help tracking some digital footprints for a client. And what I found, it wasn't just shady. It was criminal. Fake investors. Inflated revenue reports. Dummy accounts showing money that never existed. And best of all, the kicker was a ledger file. Poorly hidden, but there. With a line item labeled FT transfer, safe withdrawal, 25K. Timestamped exactly 2 days before the trust freeze. I didn't know how he got the code. Not yet. But I knew now that he logged the theft in his own system. Maybe he thought it was clever. Maybe he thought no one would ever find it. He was wrong. I compiled everything. Saved it to a secure drive. Set up an encrypted backup on a cloud server under a pseudonym. And then, I waited. Because the next time he or Marlene came sniffing around, I wanted to be ready. But I also knew something else. This wasn't enough. This wasn't just about proving they were liars. This was about showing them I'd stopped playing by their rules. That I wasn't the quiet, harmless kid anymore. I was walking away from the wreckage of our family. But I wasn't walking empty-handed. And the next move would be mine. I didn't plan for things to change overnight. I just planned for them to stop falling apart. But the strange thing about rock bottom is that once you're there, really there, bruised and burned and stripped down to your last nerve, every small win feels like a handhold. And eventually, you start to climb. I was still working 16-hour days, still eating microwaved rice and eggs 4 nights a week, still dodging Mom's worried glances and Nathan's silence like landmines. But I had something now. A direction. A mission. A feeling I hadn't had in months. Leverage. I started with the portfolio. The fake one. Not to deceive, but to protect. I built a new personal website. Simple, clean, but loaded with the right keywords. Freelance tech consultant. Data security specialist. Discrete project handling. I wasn't lying. Not really. Everything I was doing, tracing Caleb's shady business dealings, following his digital paper trail, organizing evidence, was, in its own weird way, a kind of consultation. I just wasn't billing him for it. I posted the site to a few private Discord groups, some freelancer networks, and even an anonymous subreddit I used to lurk in during college. I made a fake testimonial or 2 to get it rolling, and within a week, I had my first client, a small e-commerce site owner who'd been hacked and needed help recovering their customer list. I charged him $500. He paid in 24 hours. That money didn't solve everything, but it did something else. It reminded me that I wasn't helpless. I wasn't stuck waiting for Marlene to make the next move or Nathan to crawl back with half an apology. I had skills. I had evidence. And I had time. With the audit still pending, the trust account frozen, and Mom's retirement plans in limbo, I knew I couldn't fix everything at once. But I could build something. Something real. Something mine. So I did. By the end of the month, I had 4 clients. 2 were basic data cleanup jobs. 1 was a small business that wanted to migrate to a secure invoicing platform. And 1, a big one, was a former startup CEO who needed help scrubbing his name from a very public scandal involving stolen crypto. I charged him $2,000. He didn't blink. It wasn't glamorous work. Half of it was automated. The other half was research, scripts, and staying up late on forums figuring out how to bypass third-party caches. But it paid. More than that, it gave me control. And the whole time, I kept tabs on Caleb. Quietly. He'd gone quiet on social media. No more flashy dinners or cryptic, big things coming soon tweets. That alone was suspicious. He wasn't the type to go dark unless something was brewing, or unless he'd been told to lay low. I cross-referenced the accounts he still had active, ran his email through a breach database, and found a string of matching usernames tied to an obscure crypto marketplace registered offshore. I couldn't get access to the wallet transactions directly, but I flagged a few of the pseudonyms and tracked them across different forums. One of them, Z3Virus, posted on a Black Hat message board asking for help laundering large amounts of USDT through NFTs. The kicker? They posted a screenshot. It was cropped carefully, but not carefully enough. The top corner showed a timestamp that matched the exact hour Caleb had left the co-working space last month. I archived the thread, saved everything, took screenshots, and even recorded a short screen capture scrolling through the discussion, just in case it got wiped later. This was bigger than I thought. He wasn't just stealing from family. He was laundering money. Meanwhile, life at home shifted too. Mom was still quiet, but she walked lighter now. She didn't say much, but she noticed the way our bills started getting paid early. The way I offered to cover groceries without hesitation. The way I installed a better security system in the house and upgraded our Wi-Fi without asking for permission. She didn't question it. She just looked at me one night while we were eating, her hand wrapped around a warm mug of tea, and said, "You're not a kid anymore, are you?" I smiled. Not for a long time. She nodded once, slowly, and didn't say anything else. But I saw the corners of her eyes crease the way they used to when she was proud of me as a kid. That was worth more than anything I'd earned online. But the real turning point came when I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in weeks. Nathan. It was short. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Just asked if I was home. Said he needed to talk. He came by later that night, looking older somehow. Not tired, just subdued. Like someone who realized too late that the bridge he burned wasn't as far behind him as he thought. He sat at the kitchen table, same spot where everything had started. Same spot where the $25,000 was first brought up. "I messed up," he said. "I waited. I thought I was protecting Mom. Thought if I gave Marlene something, just something small, she'd back off." She said all she wanted was clarity. Just enough to make sure you weren't manipulating things. I stayed quiet. "But that wasn't true," he added. "She twisted it. Used it to claim Mom was hiding money, that you forged documents. She's pushing for full control now. Of the trust. Of everything." I looked at him, expression blank. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I found out what she's doing. What Caleb's doing." He pulled a USB from his pocket and slid it across the table. "I didn't mean to spy," he said. "But I started checking some of the files I shared with her. One of them had metadata linking back to a crypto wallet. I followed it. It's Caleb's. And it's bad. I didn't pick up the USB. I didn't need to. I already know," I said. Nathan blinked. "What?" "I've been tracking him for a month." He leaned back, eyes wide. "You what?" I nodded. "I have everything. Every fake domain. Every shell company. Every wallet he used to move the money. I have proof that he took the $25K, laundered it through a fake NFT exchange, then moved it offshore." Nathan just stared at me. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked finally. I gave him a long look. "Because you didn't trust me." He looked down. Guilty. I was scared. "I know," I said. "But fear doesn't excuse betrayal. I didn't mean to betray you. But you did." The silence stretched again. Finally, he said, "So what now?" I took a breath. "I'm not just going to expose them," I said. "I'm going to bury them. Legally. Publicly. Permanently." Nathan looked nervous. "You're sure?" "I'm done being the quiet one. The background character. The good kid everyone underestimates." He didn't respond. And honestly, I didn't need him to. That night, I stayed up building something new. A secure, hidden database accessible only by encrypted key. I uploaded everything I had, documents, footage, transactions, forum screenshots, metadata, testimonials, witness logs. I created a master folder and labeled it Operation Dustpan, because I wasn't just going to sweep up this mess. I was going to clean house. And for the first time in months, I slept easy. Because for once, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. And this time, I wouldn't just survive. I'd win. The next few weeks felt like living in the eye of a storm. Outwardly, everything seemed calm. But underneath the surface, I was quietly laying the foundation for something that would change everything. The chaos surrounding the frozen trust, the lawsuit threats, and Caleb's theft had put me through every emotional ringer possible. Anger, guilt, grief, helplessness. But now, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. I was no longer reacting to their moves. I was building my own. I called it Operation Dustpan half-jokingly, but it became more than just a clever name. It became my blueprint for burning down everything Aunt Marlene and Caleb had built on lies. First, I needed someone who could take this from a digital dossier to a legal weapon. That meant finding a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but someone sharp enough to understand both family law and digital fraud. Uncle Jeff had a few connections he trusted, and one name came up more than once: Darla Penrose. I met Darla on a rainy Tuesday in a modest office above a dental clinic. She didn't look like the high-powered attorneys I'd imagined. No power suits, no dramatic hair flip. Just a practical bun, a pressed blouse, and a voice like steel wrapped in velvet. She listened as I explained everything. The theft, the audit, the family drama, the manipulation. When I got to the part about Caleb laundering money through NFTs, she held up a hand. "You have proof." I nodded. "All backed up cross-referenced, time-stamped. I've got screen captures, access logs, forum threads, even wallet activity with his initials coded into the metadata. Her eyes lit up just slightly. And you've stored this securely? Multiple encrypted backups. One local, one in the cloud under a dummy shell, one printed and locked in a fireproof safe. Now she smiled, just a little. You're not just smart, Parker. You're dangerous. She agreed to take the case, not just to help my mom recover control of the trust, but to prepare a formal fraud complaint against Caleb. Possibly even a civil suit if the funds couldn't be returned quietly. But that wasn't the most interesting part, because as we dug deeper, Darla discovered something unexpected. While researching the trust documents Nathan had shared with Aunt Marlene, she found a clause tucked deep into the original estate planning papers. It was old, drafted decades ago by Grandpa when he first established the trust. It read like boilerplate legalese, but the implications were huge. The clause stated that if any named beneficiary were found guilty of criminal behavior specifically involving family assets, their share of the trust would be forfeit. Gone. Null and void. That meant if we could prove Caleb stole from the trust, even just the $25,000, that would legally disqualify him from ever inheriting another cent. And here's the kicker. If a disqualification occurred, that beneficiary's share would automatically be redistributed evenly among the remaining parties. Which meant, if Caleb went down, his slice would go back to Mom and Uncle Jeff. I stared at the clause, stunned. This changes everything, I said. Darla nodded. Exactly. Marlene is fighting tooth and nail for access, but she doesn't realize her son is the ticking time bomb that could cost her everything. For the first time in a long time, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was poetic. And we weren't done. Darla had connections to a small but fierce investigative firm, retired analysts, forensic accountants, and one former IRS fraud investigator. She brought them in for a 2-week dig, and what they found turned Operation Dustpan from a cleanup into a full demolition. Caleb had done this before, not on the same scale, and not to family. But 2 years ago, while supposedly working on a startup, he had funneled money from a college friend's seed investment into a fake consulting company that didn't exist. The friend never pressed charges. Rumor was, Marlene paid him off to keep it quiet, but the paper trail was still there. Bank transfers, invoices, matching IP addresses. We had it all, but I didn't want to go nuclear just yet. Not until we knew exactly what Marlene was planning. So I took a risk. I contacted someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Avery, my cousin on my dad's side. She worked at a legal firm that occasionally crossed paths with high-net-worth estate cases. I didn't think she was close to Marlene, but I knew she had contacts who were. I met her for coffee under the pretense of catching up. We talked about life, about Dad, gone almost 10 years now, about the mess the family had become. I never outright asked her to spy, but she read between the lines. You want to know what's being said behind closed doors? She said. I didn't answer. She leaned in, voice low. Well, here's what I have heard. Marlene's lawyer is trying to position her as co-trustee. If she succeeds, she gets immediate access to records, voting power over the distribution, and the ability to freeze accounts herself. No court required. My blood ran cold. She could lock us out completely? I asked. Avery nodded. It's a long shot, but not impossible. Especially if Nathan supports her. He wouldn't. But I didn't finish the sentence. Because I wasn't sure anymore. That night, I called Darla and relayed everything. She paused on the line, then said, if she gets co-trustee status, we're back at square one. We need to move faster. And so we did. By now, I had turned my freelance side hustle into a full-time consulting pipeline. Clients were referring others. One crypto project even offered me equity in exchange for a security audit, which I accepted. I started stacking funds in a separate account under a newly registered LLC, Dustpan Digital Solutions. I had leverage. I had funding. I had a paper trail leading straight to Caleb's corruption and a legal team ready to present it. But I needed one final piece. Something that would not just expose Caleb, but pull Marlene into the spotlight with him. And as it turns out, Caleb gave it to me without even realizing. I was combing through old group chat logs, back when we were all in a family WhatsApp group, mostly sharing birthday invites and memes, when I found something odd. A PDF, sent by Caleb about a year ago, titled FamilyDocs.pdf. I had ignored it at the time, Probably thought it was a flyer or something trivial. But I opened it now and nearly dropped my coffee. It was a scanned copy of an old tax return. But not his. It was Mom's. Her full name, SSN, and earnings. A full breakdown of deductions and asset holdings. Attached. In a group chat. He had deleted the message minutes later, probably realized what he'd done. But I had downloaded it. And even though I didn't remember doing so, my archive folder had the original file. I ran metadata and found the smoking gun. The original file wasn't scanned by Caleb. It was scanned on Marlene's printer. Her name, her IP. Even the model of the printer was embedded in the file's metadata. That's when it all clicked. They'd been digging into Mom's records for months before the trust fight started. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't panic. It was premeditated. Marlene had accessed Mom's personal records without permission, and Caleb had used them to build their case. That was illegal in multiple ways. And now? Now I had proof. I emailed Darla the file. 5 minutes later, she called me. Her voice was electric. "This is it," she said. "This is your hammer." I nodded. "So what do we do next?" She smiled. "Now we show them what happens when you back the quiet kid into a corner." And just like that, Operation Dustpan shifted into its final phase. Because this wasn't just setup anymore. This was checkmate in motion. I didn't announce the revenge. I didn't post a cryptic, "they'll regret crossing me" message. I didn't even tell Mom what I was about to do. Because this wasn't about theatrics. It was about justice. It was about precision. And it started with a letter. Not from me, but from Darla. Certified. Formal. Strategically timed. Marlene and her attorney received it on a Tuesday morning. The letter opened with a calm, professional tone, almost sterile. It acknowledged their petition to claim co-trustee status of the family trust and outlined the upcoming hearing date. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was the attached notice of pending fraud investigation, complete with digital evidence logs, metadata forensics, and a formal declaration from the cybersecurity team detailing Caleb's involvement in laundering the stolen $25,000. It included footage of Caleb entering the safe room, system logs showing access to my login credentials, records of offshore crypto wallets traced to his digital alias, screenshots of the NFT laundering scheme, and most damningly, the group chat PDF with Mom's tax records, scanned from Marlene's own printer. It was a legal shot across the bow, but that wasn't the real play. This was 3 hours after Marlene received the letter. Darla filed a request for disqualification of beneficiary, citing Clause 9B of Grandpa's trust. The clause that stated any beneficiary proven to have committed criminal or unethical activity involving trust funds would be permanently removed, and their portion redistributed to the remaining heirs. Caleb was the first domino. But we weren't done. At the same time, Darla submitted a formal cease and desist against Marlene herself for illegal access to private tax documents, citing potential violations of federal privacy laws and interference with estate proceedings. And then, just for good measure, we had the letter forwarded to the bank holding the trust, the firm reviewing the audit, the partners at Uncle Jeff's company, and Nathan, not out of spite, out of strategy, because silence gives power to manipulators. But transparency? That's where they collapse. The fallout started fast. First, the bank issued a formal hold on Marlene's petition for co-trustee status, citing pending legal investigation. That meant she could no longer poke around inside the trust or request records. Second, her attorney, clearly blindsided, called Darla and tried to bluff. "This is all circumstantial," he said. Darla replied with 5 words that made me wish I'd been there to see it. "We welcome the criminal trial." 2 days later, Marlene fired him. By the end of the week, the bank initiated a forensic audit, but not of my mom, of Caleb. And that's when the cracks turned into fractures. We didn't hear from them directly, but the signals were there. Caleb deleted his Twitter account. His car, which had been leased under one of his shell companies, was repossessed. And that startup he'd been bragging about? It vanished overnight. The domain expired. Social's gone. No forwarding page. Just a dead site with a 403 error. Then came the phone call. I was sitting in my room, finishing up a project for one of my new clients, a subscription box brand that needed a payment security upgrade, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. But I picked up. It was Caleb. His voice was strained. Edgy. Like someone trying to sound calm while their house burned down around them. "Parker," he said. We need to talk. I said nothing. I know you're behind this, he continued. The footage, the logs, the IRS guy breathing down my neck. You think you've won, but you don't know what you're playing with. I stayed silent. He grew more desperate. You don't want to go to war with our family, Parker. You think this makes you some kind of hero. That's when I spoke. Calm. Even. I'm not a hero, Caleb. I'm the guy who got tired of letting you walk all over the people who actually cared about this family. He exhaled sharply. Do you know what you've done? You've ruined me. I didn't flinch. I didn't ruin you. You did that yourself. Then I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. Because the final twist hadn't landed yet. 2 weeks later, Darla called with something new. The forensic audit had turned up unreported income in Caleb's name. Income that couldn't be explained by freelance gigs or consulting work. It matched the stolen trust funds almost exactly. What made it worse? That income had been transferred through an account partially owned by Marlene. That was the final nail. Marlene was no longer just guilty by association. She was implicated. Darla filed a motion for permanent removal of trustee candidate and attached the full audit report. Within a week, the bank confirmed. Caleb was removed from the trust entirely. His share was redistributed, 50% to Mom, 50% to Uncle Jeff. Marlene's petition was denied indefinitely, and all future trust oversight would be handled by a neutral third-party firm, at Caleb and Marlene's expense. Mom didn't gloat. She didn't cry either. She just sat in the garden that afternoon, watching the wind move through the trees, and said, "Your grandfather would be proud of you." And for the first time since this all began, I believed her. But there was one last thing. Something I'd waited to do until the dust had settled. I called Nathan. He didn't answer. So I left a voicemail. Hey, I don't know where we stand, but I thought you should know. Mom's safe. The trust is secure. Caleb and Marlene won't be touching it again. I'm not calling to fight. I just wanted you to know that it's over. And we're okay. I don't know if he ever listened to it. I don't need to. Because this revenge, it wasn't about getting even. It was about getting free. And we were finally free. Almost. But there was one last conversation that needed to happen. And I knew exactly where to have it. In person. With the woman who started it all. Aunt Marlene. Because before I walked away for good, she needed to hear it from me. And what I had to say was going to leave her speechless. I decided to meet Aunt Marlene face to face. Not for drama. Not to yell or gloat or rub salt into the wounds she and Caleb had inflicted. I just needed her to see what it looked like when her schemes failed. When the quiet kid she overlooked, dismissed, mocked, underestimated, stared her down with nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. She agreed to the meeting surprisingly quickly. Maybe she thought she still had some kind of upper hand. Maybe she assumed I'd come crawling, asking for peace. Maybe she believed the story she'd always told herself, that she was the center of this family and we were just orbiting her. We met at a cafe downtown, one of those posh, minimalist places with recycled wood tables and overpriced scones. She arrived 10 minutes late in a beige trench coat and sunglasses, like she was auditioning for a spy movie. No, Caleb. She sat across from me and didn't smile. You look tired, she said. I didn't respond. She pulled off her sunglasses slowly. Her eyes were sharp, but different now. Not smug. Not condescending. Cautious. You wanted to talk? She asked. I nodded. Took out my phone. Slid it across the table. The screen was paused on a video file, one of the dozens we'd gathered during the investigation. It was the footage of Caleb entering the safe room at Uncle Jeff's office. Clear as day. Time-stamped. Irrefutable. I hit play. She didn't flinch. Just watched. Jaw tight. When it ended, I said, you knew. She didn't deny it. Instead, she crossed her arms and leaned back. You're very proud of yourself, aren't you? No, I said. But I'm proud of Mom. Her eyebrow twitched. She never deserved what you did to her. The lies. The sabotage. The invasion of her privacy. And the worst part? You involved your son in it. You turned him into your weapon. She looked away. I didn't turn him into anything, she muttered. He made his own choices. I leaned forward. So did you. A pause. Then she said, do you think this is justice, Parker? You think cutting us out of the trust, humiliating us, ruining our names, you think any of that makes you better than us? I don't care if I'm better, I said. I care that you can't hurt us anymore. Her mouth opened, then shut again. I could see her fighting for something to say. A counter. A defense. Nothing came. You'll lose everything. She said finally, quiet now. That money, those assets, you think they'll protect you? It never ends with money. It never ends with winning. Sooner or later, someone will come for you. Parker. I smiled. Not because I was amused, but because I'd finally understood her. She wasn't angry because she lost. She was terrified because someone like me, a quiet, polite, overlooked kid, had the power to take her down. She wasn't used to losing control. And now, she had none. No one's coming for me, I said. Because I didn't lie. I didn't steal. I didn't manipulate anyone. I stood up and slid the phone back into my pocket. I came here to say goodbye, I added. You and Caleb, you're done. He's being investigated for fraud. You've been barred from touching the trust ever again. You'll probably get a fine for violating federal privacy laws. Maybe worse. She swallowed hard, but her face stayed frozen. You think you won because you get to keep the money? She asked bitterly. No, I said. I won because we finally got you out of our lives. She didn't reply. I turned and walked out. And I didn't look back. The fallout came fast. Caleb was formally charged with wire fraud and unlawful access to financial systems. Turns out, one of his dummy crypto wallets had been flagged on a watch list months ago, and Darla's report gave investigators the push they needed. He didn't end up in prison. Not yet. But he was slapped with over $60,000 in restitution, banned from opening any new business accounts, and forced to settle privately with multiple investors he'd duped. One of them, ironically, was the same college friend Marlene had paid off 2 years prior. That one came back with interest. Marlene didn't escape unscathed. She was fined for unlawful access to private tax records and permanently barred from serving on any family-controlled assets, trusts, or estate matters. Her social reputation? Gone. Word spread quietly but effectively through the family network. She stopped getting invites to weddings, holidays, reunions. Uncle Jeff cut ties. Her own sister, my mom, never spoke to her again. And Nathan? He came back. Not with an apology at first, but with silence. He started showing up again, offering to help around the house, bringing groceries, picking up mom's prescriptions, trying to fix what he'd broken, not with words, but with actions. It took time, but eventually we talked. And when we did, I didn't say, I told you so. I just said, next time, trust me. And he nodded. Mom's life finally settled. She kept her half of the trust, used some of it to pay off the house, gave the rest to a financial advisor, and took a real vacation for the first time in decades. She came back tan, rested, and lighter than I'd seen her in years. As for me, I built Dustpan Digital into a real business. I took on better clients, hired a part-time developer, and moved into a small office near campus. The same people who once saw me as just a kid were now asking me for security consultations, project audits, and long-term contracts. I wasn't the background character anymore. I was the one writing the script. A few months later, I got one final message. A short email. No subject line. From Caleb. To me. Body. You were never supposed to be the one to win. Enjoy it while it lasts. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because I was enjoying it. Not the money. Not the revenge. But the silence. The peace. The safety. The knowledge that no one was going to hurt my mom again. That no one was ever going to make me doubt myself again. And that sometimes, the quiet kid wins.
Middle. Nah, because you're right. That's crazy. I be sweet. You know how dangerous freaking the blades are, Gio? You could quite literally cut someone's finger off. Scary. Hi, Loki. Fuck, my battery's on 5%. Holy shit. Wait, I need to grab a charger.